Welcome. This is the Seek Coach podcast, a podcast exploring the Seek principles and how to live them in the 21st century. Episode 7, SOCH Mental Health. Welcome to the Seek Coach podcast. This is Avtar Singh, wishing you are all well and keeping safe. Today we meet with two of the founding members of an organization called SOCH Mental Health, who are based in Canada, specifically in the Brampton area. The mission of SOCH is to empower the South Asian community and other ethnic communities to recognize and accept mental health as an essential part of their wellness. In this episode, I catch up with Jasmeet and Maneet, who are both registered nurses in Canada. They both have a passion for mental health. They talk more about how they started a grassroots community-led initiative which became SOCH Mental Health. If you want to find out more information about SOCH Mental Health, go to sochmentalhealth.com or follow them on Instagram at soch_mental health. They are both doing amazing work. They're both full of energy, vibrant, and are strong women entrepreneurs. And I'm sure you're going to find this episode really interesting and exciting and inspiring. So do spread the word about this amazing organization and support them in whichever way you can. Enjoy the episode and stay blessed. So hello Maneet and Jasmeet, welcome to the Seek Coach podcast. I'm so glad that you're here, and as a warm welcome from all our listeners out there and from myself, welcome to the platform.
Thank you. We're so excited to join you and meet you virtually. I think that's one thing I can be thankful for with the pandemic is that we got to meet and connect, which is amazing to do so across the pond.
Definitely. And I think I was very keen not to just be UK centric with this platform and reach as far as I can really. And so I was over the moon when you accepted both of you to be on this platform. So I think what would be brilliant for our listeners is if you can both introduce yourselves, tell us about what you do as a profession, a bit of background about yourself before we move on to the organization that you've created. So
yeah, definitely. So my name is Jasmeet or Jasmeet, depending on how you want to say it. So I'm a registered nurse, and I think I've always been really passionate about mental health. And growing up, I never really thought about what I wanted to do, but somehow fell into nursing. So, while I was growing up, mental health was a topic that was constantly in my house. My dad struggled with alcoholism. So that's kind of where like that passion started. And then, fell into nursing, graduated about 8 years ago. Worked at a hospital setting, then came into the community. And I think that the one constant was just working with our community, having that cultural piece was something that was really important to me. And of course, it kind of stemmed back from my experience with mental health in the home setting. So yeah, and I guess I'm just really fortunate that my best friend, Maneet, also is a nurse. She'll, of course, do her own introduction, but I think that's what really makes our whole project with SOCH, which we'll also get into, really fascinating and unique. We're both best friends. We both ended up doing the same thing, even though we didn't talk about it. And here we are, both 8 years into nursing and working with our community.
I think just piggybacking on that, the funny thing is Jasmeet's husband always says that like I came into the world and then decided I needed another version of myself. So Jasmeet came a clone. And so Jasmeet came a year later, and we literally have the exact same story. If you talk about like, I met her in grade 8, and then we went to high school together. We both did nursing. We both worked in the hospitals. We've both worked in the community. We
lived together for 1 year.
Yeah, we lived together. We were roommates. And then, I finished my master's in November 2018. And guess who's doing their master's right now and should be finishing this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's me.
The true soul sisters then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think same with Jasmine, like for myself, mental health has Liana, I have a memory of him in grade 8, me coming home and him, being at home, the curtains drawn, my mom's at work, and just kind of being like, what's going on? Like, why isn't dad at work? Like, what is this? And I think later on coming to understand that he struggled with depression, and then starting to see like mental health in our community. So, with like Jasmeet, I've always had a longing to work with my community. I was that one student in my accelerated program at Mac who was always like, what about culture? What about culture? Where's the cultural lens? And, I did an international placement in Southern India. And I think that point is when I really realized that I've had this dream to go work internationally and go help our community somewhere else. And I think that's when I realized, I was like, wait a second, my community is also back home. And I feel like that will kind of have me meet my passion, where I can help my community and I can kind of be that bridge between my parents' generation and my generation and that gap. So we've had a lot of experience, I think personally. We've seen mental health closely with our loved ones, very, very close, in our homes, in our friends, and then professionally. And I guess, we'll kind of dive into that as we continue the conversation. But that's about us. Like, we love what we do. We love our community. We're so proud to be part of the Sikh community, and actually to really, stand by the pillars of Seva is what you're kind of aiming with SOCH.
Wow, it's brilliant. It's really inspiring. And I think you can feel the enthusiasm that you both have for the sector and mental health. And I think it is one of the challenges that, a lot of people have suffered mental health, issues, or through their families labeled it that, because it was just sometimes that happens, or, don't talk about it. I mean, I myself grew up seeing sort of domestic abuse from my father, drinking and doing that sort of stuff. So, but I would, the community was not ready to talk about it at that point. And it's a shame that was the case. But listening to you, sort of bringing that back to the grassroots of where you live and serving the community and the Seva element, it's exactly the kind of good examples of what people should be doing and the differences we can make individually through our passions and through our sectors and what we do. One of the things I really loved about the organization's name, which we move on to now, is SOCH, and SOCH Mental Health. And I think the word is so apt. So those people listening who don't know what SOCH is, can you explain a bit about how it came about, who thought of it, and how you settled on the name, the impact you've had so far with the organization?
So for those that don't know, in Hindi, Urdu, and Punjabi, which are three prominent South Asian languages, Soch means to think or a thought. And I think it's really appropriate for like the aim and the mission of our organization, which is to change our community's thinking, or our soch, about mental health. And I think like it also kind of goes back into both my and Maneet's personal experience of growing up with mental health issues in our homes. Like you said, there's so many issues in South Asian homes. People are aware about it, but don't talk about it. So same thing with us. Like, people knew my dad struggled with drinking. I'm sure many your close family friends knew your dad struggled with depression, but that conversation really wasn't there. So I think like that name kind of just came organically. We'll share the story about how it came, but I think it really hones in on our personal experience, because we were like, if we are struggling with these issues, now we're professional nurses, there's other people out there that are also struggling, and we need to do something to start this conversation. And we really felt that it starts with your thinking, right? Like the way that you think about a topic is going to affect the way you have a conversation about it, or not have a conversation about it. So we really, with the mission of SOCH it's health promotion and preventative care, right? So there's so many organizations that focus on people that have a mental illness, but we want to focus on changing your thinking about SOCH. Sorry, changing your thinking about mental health. So Maneet, do you want to talk about how we came about with the name? I know you were previously mentioning it.
Yeah, so we were actually really disappointed when we landed on SOCH initially, because we wanted the name Sama. And that's, I think a lot of organizations pick an acronym. So South Asian Mental Health Awareness would have been Sama. And when we started doing our research, we're like, Asama already exists in BC. Like, what are we going to do? And I think after that point, started brainstorming and really wanting to simplify like one word. And like, Jasmeet explained, the concept of SOCH, it being one word. Initially, it also started off as an acronym for us. So SOCH initially stood for supporting our community's health. And that's how we first started our work and started promoting ourselves. But then just SOCH in itself is so powerful, and it's one word. It captures so many elements. And I think it really strongly captures like what we are aiming to do. There's a lot of organizations out there that do clinical care and, but that I think creating more organizations with more counselors and more outpatient programs, it's not going to address the problem, because the problem is the stigma. People don't know these services exist. They don't even know this is a problem. They don't even know what mental health is. And that's what SOCH is about. It is about capturing not just people that are at that point in their life where they're struggling, but it's catching them before then, giving them the resources, the tools, and building that resiliency. And I think SOCH, the word in itself, it really captures that. Yes. And it speaks to so many different, I think, people in so many different generations, because we can approach like our Babajis, BBGs in our community and talk about SOCH, and they get SOCH. They understand SOCH means mental health in their way. And I think that's been powerful for us.
I think the other sort of powerful part of it is that Gurbani itself talks about the mind and SOCH a lot. I mean, Gurbani is almost a self-help manual that we've been given by our gurus. And I think part of that is we've lost the real meaning or the way the tools are meant to help us. And I think if you refer to that as SOCH, it resonates, because these are the words we hear in our daily languages, in our houses, in the gurdwaras. So I think I just love the name of the organization. I think it speaks volumes, in one word. And I think it's so apt for the time that we're living in. And like you said, around the stigma, I think the biggest thing is trying to get into people's mindsets, that what is mental health and what it covers, because it's so huge and it affects everybody in so many different ways. And the causes are very different. But like you say, the preventative measure is to change your thinking and then change your life, which I think is really beautiful. So just to give a basic understanding of what kind of services and support do you offer?
So like we were saying, SOCH is all about health promotion, education, and building resiliency. So through educational campaigns or anti-stigma campaigns, whether it's in person or online, through this various social media platforms, we want to be able to provide our community with the educational tools about different forms of mental health. So we also try to bring in a lot of our own personal experience and our stories. And I think that is what really resonates with people, is our own transparency as well, because it's not just, using medical jargon and a clinical lens to explain this to our community. It's actually getting people's stories out there, because with the South Asian tradition, we really, place a lot of value on the oral tradition of storytelling. So whether that's through workshops where we have people sharing their stories, we want people to be able to relate to our message. So with SOCH, because we are based in Brampton, our in-person workshops they first started off in Brampton. Then we slowly started spreading throughout the Greater Toronto area. But because of the power of social media, I would definitely say that SOCH is building a global platform now. This right here is an example, right? Like through social media, we were able to connect with you and have this conversation. So, definitely thank God for social media. We are able to get our message across to South Asians all across the globe right now.
And just to add to that, I think the other element is that we were really reluctant to go online at first, like being licensed, being nurses. This is not something that was part of our schooling. Social media kind of picked up after the fact. So we had a lot of community support. One of our co-founders for SOCH, Harman Guriwal, was actually opened a co-working space in downtown Brampton. And he's my cousin. So he actually heard Jasmeet and myself talk about SOCH for a whole year. We're going to go on the radio. We're going to have a TV show. This is how we're going to change the world, SOCH, about mental health. And he was like, okay, I've been hearing you guys talk about this for over a year. You guys need to do something already. So I think for anyone out there that's listening, if you've had an idea and you wanted to put it into motion, SOCH is not something that just happened overnight. This has been cultivating for ourselves, I think, much of our personal experience and then working professionally. But 2014 was when we started to kind of come together with it. And 2015 is when we did our first workshop. And, with the work that we do to kind of answer, we can't give you a direct answer of exactly what SOCH does. SOCH does whatever the community wants it to do. So, people reach out to us and they might be like, for instance, we had a community member from Brampton reach out because her neighbor died by suicide because of postpartum depression. And she's like, I'm very passionate about this topic. We need more awareness. And, she was in the midst of applying for med school. So she had, personal experience as a community member, a vested interest in the topic. So we worked with her to design a workshop in Punjabi. And the amazing thing is that I heard about, postpartum depression and issues with fertility and everything from that workshop, from even some of people that I could never have imagined, people that were in our close-knit circle, because a lot of now with the work that we do, our friends and family do come and show support and join the conversation. So, from doing workshops on postpartum depression to doing workshops on hip hop and mental health, to going into the Gurdwaras and, then having an opportunity to be invited to the States, to go to Indianapolis and, do a presentation in Indiana, like at one of the universities there, with the South Asian community, and go to their local Gurdwara. Like it's just kind of growing and going where the community wants us to go. So people reach out to us on what the issues are. And, right now, I think something active in Brampton with the pandemic, I think what's already been exacerbated is the issue with international students and the supports that they need. So that's something like a new and coming area that we ourselves are kind of going to be working towards.
Wow. So, I mean, that's an ideal way of working, I guess, is an agile method, because you do a case-by-case basis and you see the kind of issues that come out and what the opportunities are, and I guess, it then caters to much more than just fixating on a number of services or just specific things that you're able to do. That's really interesting. So,
I think in its true sense, I was just going to add, it's like community. I think this is how you do community, right? Like we can have an idea of what we think the problems are based on our, clinical experience. But until you don't have the community's voice, like, we might do a workshop at a Gurdwara, and from there, few people share a story or they reach out to us on social media. That now then drives what we're going to be doing moving forward. So it's very rooted in the community, moving upwards rather than top down. We're only focusing on these issues and this is what it is and this is what the program's going to be. It's very having people's voices captured and then now creating a program. And I think that's where nursing is very powerful and what we've learned in our academic careers. Doing care plans with nursing, they're very holistic. And going to McMaster, we've kind of adapted the problem-based learning, PBL, where you have the community coming together, solving an issue in dialogue and conversation, which is, as Jasmeet mentioned, storytelling is so powerful in our South Asian community. And that's why, it's so hard to capture everything we've done now. Some of the things, Jasmeet and I were just having a conversation this weekend, we're like, the amount of connections we've made, the friendships we've found through this initiative, it blows our mind. Like, we're so blessed to be doing this work.
And especially if you get the community involved in what their interests are, they're actually going to learn a lot more efficiently rather than, here's a presentation that we're doing. So I think that's something that's also unique to SOCH, is that even though we do focus on, psychoeducation and providing information to the community, we do it in like a non-traditional sense. You'll never really come to a presentation with SOCH. We call it a facilitation, right? Like we might have a PowerPoint where we have pictures as a visual aid, but you'll never see just us talking. It's very heavily discussion focused, asking the audience questions and getting them to, form groups. And whether, like Maneet said, it's a case study, or someone's talking about their experience, and then, going from there. And then we just fill in the gaps where we see fit based on our personal and professional experience. So it's definitely unique in the way that we deliver the information, and it's getting the community to support one another and learn from each other as well, which is such a powerful tool that we've seen both in like the Gurdwara setting, as well as more of like a formal approach, whether we're doing workshops in a library or a community center. So it runs across the board.
I'm just smiling here because I'm thinking about all the times we've broken those rules. Like we got invited to a university like panel discussion. So the audience is facing us in rows. And when it came to our turn, we're like, okay, everyone now let's get in a circle. We're going to have a conversation. And they're like, what? Like we're at a panel. Like, what is this? Right.
And even what you make it.
It's what you make it. And even our experience of being invited when we went to Indiana, once again, was a presentation, and we broke out the entire session into a discussion. Everyone asked questions like, let's like, what are the issues happening in the community? And then taking the mic around, like we love that. We love that engagement and that piece. And then even doing this at a Gurdwara, I think that is the place that it's probably been the most powerful, because, you have Sangat that comes and you're sitting there and you're facing, towards Babaji, and just even during that time, we have our volunteers, whoever's willing to help us. And we're like, we want to hear this is not a presentation. This is a conversation.
Yes.
So that's why I was like, as Jasmeet's sharing, I'm literally having flashbacks of those moments, and people initially being like, wow, they're really doing this. They're breaking the traditional sense of how, I guess, these conversations usually take place.
And I think that is a key thing I've noticed in the corporate world around talking and including and having discussions and facilitating is two different things. And the true value is when everybody inputs, because everybody has a different opinion, different view, and they can challenge each other in a safe environment. And they almost, because it's grassroots, they take ownership of it, and they say, right, and you can flip the question and say, so what do you think the solution should be? What's your ideas? So I think that's a really interesting point around the Gurdwara, as you mentioned. So I think here we might get to a bit of this is the culture in the UK, this is the culture in Canada. And so I was invited to do a presentation to a kids camp around summer, just to talk about something around Sikhi. And I did the presentation in a way that was a facilitation, really. So I had a microphone, and I think the kids were a bit shocked that I was walking around asking them their opinions. What do you think about Seva? What do you think about Simran? What do you think about all of these concepts? And I was amazed, because if that didn't happen, they would just listen and go back. But actually what they left with was an engaged session. And I think their parents were probably more surprised that, wow, my kids said that. But you wouldn't have got that. And I think the thing around the Gurdwara system was, Gurbani talks about vichar. Vichar means a two-way dialogue, not a one to many. And most of our kathas and the way we communicate is one person sits on stage, or, and it's too many, but there's no discussion back. And so I commend you on how you managed to get that kind of in the Gurdwara system, because I think in the UK we struggle with that. We haven't completely got the buy-in from the Gurdwara committees, and that's what people struggle with. But I would want to see, is that a Canadian thing? Because I think maybe they're a bit more open to this, or how?
So I think the reason we're both laughing is because it actually was a huge challenge to even get into the Gurdwara.
Yes.
It took us years, I would say, even going, so obviously we understand mental health, there's a huge stigma, but when Maneet was doing her undergrad, she was doing a study on diabetes, and I helped her. And just
see, once again, Jasmeet's always part of what I'm doing. She was helping me on my research.
And I didn't even, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm getting the credit for it, but diabetes, totally unrelated to mental health. Like, I feel like it's a topic that's fairly common that our community talks about. But even then, like going into the Gurdwara, the person at the front was like, oh, it's part of research center niya, jo bhi piche langar hall se laddu khanda, onu jaake puch lo. Right. So, I mean, looking back now, we can probably understand, okay, maybe there was a miscommunication, maybe they didn't understand our agenda, whatever, right? But then when it came to mental health, of course, there's that added layer of that stigma. But it literally took us so long to get into the Gurdwara space. Because at first we were just going to different Gurdwara. And then we were like, okay, let's go to this one because we hear it's more liberal. But even then, like at one point we had the names of like 6 Baba G's memorized because they're like, okay, mere valohaya hun ede ko jao, call this one. Okay, mere valohana, call this one. And no one even got back to us, right? And I even remember at one point, Maneet's dad was like, oh, do you want me to come with you? And we're like, it shouldn't be like that. Like, okay, yes, like I said, maybe there's miscommunication about what our agenda is. That's a very traditional standard. And, there's of course fear when it comes to change. Maybe it's because we're female. Maybe it's because we're born here. Because that also makes a difference, right? Because we're like, we shouldn't have to take a man to get into the Gurdwara. This is supposed to be a communal space.
Exactly.
But of course, as we grew and we understood, we're like, you know what, if it takes someone, an insider to get us in, it is what it is. This is the way the community works. And we kind of just have to go along with it to a certain extent, as long as we get our foot in the door. And then finally, years later, we were doing a workshop for Sikh Heritage Month. So in April in Ontario, it's Sikh Heritage Month. And we were doing a workshop at a local art and museum place. And then one of the individuals that attended, his father was on the committee at a Gurdwara. So that's how we got her in. Right. So, and then after that presentation, the committee changed. So we lost our connection. So going back, definitely been a huge challenge to get into the Gurdwara
and stay in.
And exactly. And stay in. And I think the few times that we have gone in, we've tried to still use that same facilitation approach. But definitely when we've seen other, speakers come to the Gurdwara, it's still that same traditional prachar as opposed to the vichar that you were talking about.
Yes. So I guess, so that was just to get in and do your own session. So that's not even talking about them allocating some budget or some continuous.
No. This was us just constantly. And, I think one thing that we have done is be consistent. Like Jasmeet and I have not been focused on, for instance, I was talking to her even 2 weeks ago, we had a South Asian engagement piece within the region of PL. So our city of Brampton falls as a part of that. We were part of the conversation with lead organizations on how to support our community with the pandemic. And many people didn't know about SOCH. And the thing is, a lot of people don't know this is not our full time. We are hoping. The thing is, this started as just, our seva to the community, our passion, and it is still our passion, but the needs exceed our resources. And it's something that we want to pursue as our full time, but that takes funding. And even our process of doing our graduate studies, securing, a job, having that stable income, and then obviously still having balance in our lives. But a lot of people, didn't know about us. And I think the other thing is that we are not so focused. Of course, where connections are going to come back to the community, we will do those connections, but we haven't been spending so much time marketing ourselves, paying into social media and marketing our page. Our page is run by the both of us. We're very organic with what we do. We haven't been following a marketing strategy. We've been learning the amount of things that I've learned that I'm like, this is not part of nursing school. And, people are like, you guys are entrepreneurs. And first I was so uncomfortable with that. I'm like, what? Don't call me that. I'm a nurse. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know business. But I think with our focus has been the community. So being consistent with our conversation, taking opportunities that come, which will, I think, benefit the community is what we kind of focus on, not taking on more than we can chew, because I think that's a big thing. A lot of organizations sometimes struggle with, like, it's the two of us. We are, looking to expand our volunteers and whatnot. But once again, that would take more time for us to organize, right? So we're in the phase of that. But with the Gurdwaras, what was interesting, I think because of our consistency and now our name being out there in the community, that now in the last year, we had Gurdwaras reach out to us after there was a suicide in the community. So that in itself, of course, our hope is to be preventative, to get this information out there before the fact, and know people to know, how do you help yourself? If it's a crisis situation, where do you go? But the fact that people can even reach out to us after something devastating has happened it's been a huge win for us, because that allows for a conversation to happen and for community to be informed rather than it just be pushed under the rug.
I spoke to another mental health organization based in the UK called Seek Your Mind just a couple of days ago, and they mentioned the same suicide being the leverage, that sort of the trigger point that allowed them to have the conversation in the Gurdwaras here as well. So it's a shame it takes an extreme event to get that on the agenda. But it was just interesting that, an event that happened in Canada has an impact that allowed an organization here to get that conversation heard at the Gurdwara and where they were. So what's the response been like from the community then, from the workshops and the Gurdwaras, and, how's the engagement been? Have you sort of found any kind of recurring themes, and has it been well received? And do you think, how do you think that's going to progress in the future?
Yeah, definitely. The response has been really positive. So like Maneet was mentioning, all the workshops that we do, any topic that we focus on, it comes from the community, right? So just the fact that people are following our work, whether it's online or coming to the workshops in person, now that we've been doing this for the past 5 years, like Maneet said, that consistency I think also helps.
Yeah.
Like before the pandemic, we were doing a minimum of one monthly workshop for the past 4 years, right? So I think the consistency also helps people build that trust in the organization and the work that we are doing. And I think the transparency also helps, right? So like with Maneet and myself, we are very open with our stories about how our dads have struggled with mental health issues. And I think that also lets people know that, okay, I can trust these individuals, and then they reach out to us. So definitely we're really thankful for the community. And we also understand that in the in-person workshops, sometimes, people are really focused on the number, like how many people attended. But like Maneet was mentioning, with us, it's really about the community. So even if like 5 people do come, to us, we're like, that's a win, right? Like we don't need like 50 to 100 people. I mean, that would be nice, but when it's a smaller group, the people that are coming, they're coming for a purpose. They are going to get something out of it. And those connections are going to be built either with us or the other participants as well. So of course, we still advocate for people to spread the word about what SOCH is, what we are doing. Anytime we go on, the radio or like a TV segment or wherever we are, even our workshops, we're like, even if you can go and tell one person what you learned here today, that is just doing the work of SOCH, that it's that education piece. You're changing someone's thinking by just letting them know, hey, this is what I heard today. This is the workshop I attended. So we still advocate for that, that piece as well.
Like a multiplier effect. So even if you change one person, they're going to tell many, then it spreads it. So I guess it sounds like this workshop facilitation method is really successful. It allows people to, allows the community in a grassroots way to join in the conversation and lead the conversation effectively. Do you ever think about sort of putting that in some sort of model which other organizations could use to facilitate meetings of that nature? Or, so is there any other ways of what you've gained knowledge on of how things are working for you in your area or how maybe other organizations could take advantage of it? I don't know if anyone has in the past or asked you, or you work with other organizations as well. So it'd be interesting to know about that side of things.
I think this just kind of adds into the need for SOCH to become full-time already. We have a lot of
it's probably doing
experience,
more work
and
to do.
yeah, and that's for sure. And I think, it is something really important. I think that's the value of this frontline work, is to evaluate it. It makes it credible, and it allows other people to follow the format, because what we're doing with SOCH, specifically the South Asian community, like our target is South Asian. We have been heavily rooted within South Asian Punjabi because we speak the language, we're from the community, but our aspirations for the near future are to focus on other elements within the South Asian community and keep that work going. So there is a need to share this model, because where this model is powerful is that it's the community's voice. And it kind of goes back to the previous question you were asking us, was what has been the response for people that come to the Gurdwara? Even if it is, like we aim to go in and have a conversation and facilitate, but sometimes with the setup, the time constraints, sometimes you're not sure. Like our most recent workshop that we did at a Gurdwara in Brampton was more presentation style, because of there was over 100 people. It was a full hall, and within that, we still anytime have a conversation. We can go in with a plan, but the very first thing anyone should ever ask is, what do you guys want to gain from today's session? This hour is yours. Yes, we have a blueprint. Yes, we can follow this, but what do you want? What do you want to learn from today? What is something that, one thing or something, because someone might have shown up because they need to get connected to services, and you were their window and their opportunity. And if you didn't create that opportunity for them to express their voice, it's lost. Like, it takes so much courage to show up somewhere, right? And then to participate. And obviously don't put pressure on people. That's the other thing we always say. Like I think with our presentation style, we've gauged really well when people may not be open to sharing. But I think that's the power of storytelling. So if no one else shares anything, if in terms of lived experience or something related to mental health, Jasmine and myself are very open about our experiences. And you find that as soon as one person speaks, everyone wants to speak,
Yes.
right? And also think about the people that are not speaking. They are participating, they're listening. You have no idea the changes that are manifesting within themselves. So I think that is very powerful. So community voice, and honestly, with the work that I've done at the hospital and then being a community mental health nurse for an agency for over 5 years, I did not see the community's voice reflected in the programs that were being delivered. And I know a lot of people say that it's included. In my professional career for nursing, it has not been included to the level it needs to be. And I think including ethnic communities is just out of the question. That has not taken place.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations do jump on that bandwagon of being culturally competent or, culturally safe. But really, at the ground level, what are you doing, right? Like, there's a lot of talk about it, but there's not a lot that's being done, right? Like Maneet was mentioning, when we both worked in the community, with me, at one point, I was the only South Asian on that team of 10, right? And we served a part of Brampton. So it's just like, what's going on here, right? And even with Maneet, I know she's felt that too, like one of like 2 South Asians on a team. And going back to like that family piece, if you're not understanding that the South Asian culture is heavily rooted in the family model, because like we've both heard, working with our previous employers, that our colleagues were like, well, the client with the mental health issue is our client, not the family. But we're like, this is a huge loss, because with the South Asian culture, sometimes we live in extended families. If you don't provide education to the grandmother that's, with this person 24/7, nothing's really going to get done. So definitely, I think that's something that we also kind of learned from our personal and professional experience. We don't like presentations ourselves, so we don't do them. Working in organizations, we see that there's a top-down approach, so we try not to do that. We get the community to tell us what they want, right? So definitely we put in a lot of like what we want, because it is our organization, but we feel like it works. So there's that.
I guess like you said, there's a clear discrepancy between services that are available, but people understanding how to deliver those to the South Asian community, because if they are reluctant to talk about it, even to our own people, we have to facilitate and get it out and make it comfortable. They're never going to get to those services and make use of those funds which have been diverted to help these communities. So do you think there's a piece around giving sort of healthcare providers that insight? Like, have you had anyone reach out to you to say, look, we've heard you've been working with the South Asian community, and what have you learned, so that they can inform their funding programs, the delivery of those services, and how they've actually been doing that?
So I think that's actually something we forgot to mention because SOCH really does have such a broad umbrella. Like we do that, I guess, frontline work with the community, but recently we also got into doing more of like training for other organizations as well. So I believe it was last year, we did a training session with Peel Children's Aid Society on how to work with the South Asian community. Right. So like that was such an amazing opportunity because we got to go in and actually teach, different workers, like social workers and whatnot, case managers on how to work with the South Asian community. And to us, I think that was like a huge eye opener as well, because we're like, this organization has been around, like other organizations as well, that have been working with this community for years, decades, and no one's taught you how to work with them. So even that gap was just so interesting. Like, are we actually the first ones to come in to these, particular organizations and teach you how to work with the community? But it was very well received, and people really enjoyed, the information that we provided. So I think that's also something that needs to be done as well. It doesn't always have to be SOCH, but like anyone can do it. And I think that's a piece that's also missing for non-South Asian workers in the healthcare field.
I think you've got so much value to add to in so many different ways. And I think, like you say, it's probably difficult because it's only the two of you at the moment. So you mentioned volunteers and teams. So at the moment, who's the others involved in the organization, and sort of how has that changed things? Are you able to do more of an impact because you've got volunteers, and are they people with lived experience or professionals? Is there a mix?
So our volunteer team is still in the midst of being more so formalized and organized. So initially when we had done a call out for volunteers, we started in August, where we had individuals who wanted to facilitate and had some sort of, I think our thing was like, either you have had lived experience or you have mental health dialogue in your professional training or work experience. And from that, we had a group of individuals who attended two-part training. One was an introduction and one was an actual like mental health 101. In addition to that, we also wanted them to attend at least 2 workshops. And the reason for that is that, yes, you can be passionate about mental health, but I think SOCH on how we do our work and how we've branded ourselves, like we have a specific style. So if individuals are not understanding, like, our values, our mission, then it's kind of hard. So that was actually supposed to be, they were done their training, and then coming in the new year, we were going to set off with them expanding our team and creating their workshops. But with everything that's going on around the world right now, that's kind of been on a bit of a pause. So at the moment, I would say like 95%, I don't know if more, of everything from accounts to social media to emails,
planning the workshops,
planning everything. Jasmeet and myself have been doing that. We do have a board, like we officially, for SOCH, we have actually two arms of SOCH. One is a nonprofit, and that is community programming that is for the community and free. With the community needs and with the training that's required, we've also opened up a for-profit branch for SOCH, like a business model. So 2 individuals who were totally resisting being entrepreneurs are now managing 2 things, which is exciting. So we actually, from our nonprofit, we stepped off the board. We do have, we have board members that are in the working progress, but I think everything that we're doing is in the very grassroots community phase. So it's really exciting to see where things go and how things evolve. I think just to kind of highlight like some of the projects that we've done that have been very special, and I think really set the tone for the work we do, is the latest project that we had with Brampton Crematorium and Visitation Center, where we designed a South Asian grief support group. So that was the first ever. We've done 2 rounds of it, and that was, you know, a funeral home reaching out to us with a need for the community. Grief and loss is the root of so many mental health concerns, unresolved, you know, pain and suffering that individuals have. And we've seen that in our professional careers. So that has been something that really, you know, I never could have imagined us doing something like that through SOCH.
I think, like you said at the beginning, it's very difficult to describe all that you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, we just do whatever comes our way.
It's a truly evolving, innovating way of doing things, isn't it? And I think the similar point that was raised in the other episode I had with the other mental health organization was around actually being a bit business orientated, and some people, when they start an initiative around seva, principally giving, it's very difficult with the mindset to think money and business. But I think ultimately you get to a point where I don't think there's nothing wrong with it, because actually if you make more money, you can help more people. That's the frank basis of it. You know, even if you look at our Goods Our Institutes, you know, it runs on people donating money, and you're providing services with that. And we as a collective give the management money and the building, and those services are then given to many. So actually, if you look at the core of our faith and our institutes, you know, they're funded in a business type way as well. So I don't see why, and I suffer from this as well, because I'm always like, yeah, 100%. This is all free and seva, and you know, but I think there is a lot to gain from being a bit innovative around business models and delivering. And I think your training aspect. I mean, I work in a not-for-profit myself, and we ourselves deliver training. And there is an income stream there that then gets put into the charitable arm. So it's kind of like another funding method. So I think it's definitely good to be open to being more business orientated when your purpose is for the bigger good, the better good of the world and the community. So I think there's definitely a stigma we have.
Oh, definitely.
No, we resonate.
Yeah. Money would make us so uncomfortable. We would, okay, I'm like, Jasmeet, you ask. Like, I'm not asking. Or she's like, Maneet, you ask.
And that's even like after we realized we could make money from this, right? Because like Maneet meant, well, like we've already like highlighted, SOCH is still evolving. When we first did that very first workshop in 2015, we didn't really know like what we wanted to do, right? Like it kind of just started with that one, let's go have a talk about mental health. And then now it's just evolving into what the community wants. But even like those early stages, we never even thought that this could be like something that we could do full time. It's what we wanted to do full time. Like our dream job was to
we were paying out of pocket to do this work for the community.
Yeah.
Like that's just how we operated. And then I think it's also coming to understand like energy, like, you know, with money, it's you're putting all this energy into the work that you are doing for the community. And now that is, you know, you put out energy out there, you're receiving that energy back in the form of money. And the thing is, like, when you're on this path, like, you know, mental health, it's, you know, some conversations, some work, it's very mentally, emotionally exhausting. And how do you sustain yourself? How do you sustain a project and keep your passion for it going? Because on top of, you know, having a full-time job, wanting to have a personal life, you know, I'm done grad school, but at that point when I was doing grad school, working full-time and SOCH, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. So how do you make something like this sustainable? Because the problem is not going away. The community, if anything, is going to continue to need more help and more support.
Yeah, and like Maneet mentioned, like up until this year, we've been self-funding everything. So like for the past 4 or 5 years, we've just been spending our own money. But we actually did our first fundraiser in January of this year. We're so thankful we did it before the pandemic. But yeah, with the help of the community, right, like we were able to raise $10,000, which is all going to go back into community workshops and stuff, right? So of course for us, you know, there's so many, it's still a small amount in the large scale of things, because, you know, nonprofits, you know, get like hundreds of thousands of dollars during their fundraisers. But same thing for us, it's that community piece, right? Like even with our fundraiser, we didn't want to do like in a banquet hall, a sit down. It was at the Sikh Heritage Museum of Canada, in the lobby of a business center, right? Like where people were actually able to interact with each other. So still using like those innovative ways to get the community across. It was to the message, and very arts based, right? Like we had different performers from the community come in. So I think that's something that we've also learned throughout our journey with SOCH, is like that seva piece. It doesn't have to be 100%, you know, you give for free. So that's definitely been like a huge learning curve for us as well. And the community has definitely supported us all these years. And then this year, they definitely supported us with the donations that we were able to raise. So thank you for that, community.
Yeah, thank you.
We call it our SOCH family, actually.
We do. Every video, it's funny, like my cousins or like my nieces and nephews, like when they see me, they'll be like, hello, SOCH family, because that is how our videos or anything starts. Like to us, it's like we're a community, we're a family, we're all in this together. Like, please know you're not alone. Like you're not alone in suffering. There are many people around the world that are suffering in their own way. Everyone's suffering is valid. It's not more or less. You know, we sometimes compare our suffering. You're not alone. Like we're in this together. We're a family.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, it just has that inclusive, warm feeling when you say, you know, we're a family, we're together, we're in this, you know, to help each other. I think the fundraising bit, I think in today's world as well, I think a lot of people want to know where their money is going, and there's a lot of people that want to give to a grassroots organization because they know that they're not restricted with a lot of overheads, you know, so a lot of their money is actually going to that area that they want to support. So I think you would probably get a bigger response, you know, as you grow. I think that response would grow because people can resonate and see that, you know, we help SOCH, we help our community, and that's something beautiful, because you have large organizations, but you know, it's very hard to track your impact of your donation, and people are very, especially in the UK as well, they're very more aware now of who they're giving money to and what the impact of their donation is doing. So there's a lot of more focusing on small charities, especially through this pandemic. You know, charity sector as a whole is struggling because they're losing fundraising and donations just overnight. But there's a lot of support for small charities just to keep them running, because they know that what they're delivering is, you know, on a lower budget compared to a huge charity. Mm-hmm. They want them to continue their services because they're very valid in the community. So I think definitely, I think SOCH has a place in people's heart, and especially the family will be ready to support the bigger family, definitely. One of the questions I had was around, you mentioned yourself, you know, having lived experience, having your day jobs in effectively helping healthcare as well. You know, you're hearing a lot of trauma, you're exposed to a lot of people's emotions and all of those situations, and on top of it, you're doing it in your pastime as well through SOCH. How do you both manage this? Have you got any tools and techniques, and you know, how share with us how to deal with that sort of stress on a daily basis? I know that from working in, you know, children's charity, I know that the social workers, they have a network that support each other, and that's very important for them because they can then discuss very serious cases and issues and sort of have that conversation. But you know, it'd be good to hear from yourselves as well.
I think we're fortunate that we have each other. So I think that's like one tip that we can also give to anyone that's listening, is to have that accountability person, whether it's a family member or a friend. So we are blessed in that sense that this is a project that the two of us are doing together, and we are very in tune with each other. Like, you know, we've known each other since we were 13. So, you know, if one person is struggling with something, we're like, okay, you take a back seat, I'll do more of the SOCH stuff. So like, for example, right now I'm working on my thesis, which also comes from my lived experience. So my thesis for nursing is looking at the impact of drinking on Punjabi families. Right. So, like you were saying, like my full-time job, was mental health. SOCH is mental health. Now my school is even mental health. So there's like a lot of heavy stuff all around. So right now, like, this is a conversation Maneet and I have had, like at a certain point, I'm going to need to take a step back, and then, she's willing to do some extra work. So definitely having that support system is really key, especially when we're working with such, vulnerable populations, like such heavy topics. And also like having like a work-life balance, like Maneet has mentioned, right? Like knowing when to end the day, and okay, like usually on the weekends we don't do SOCH stuff. Today's fun, so this is like a fun conversation, right? Like knowing like, okay, these days are for our personal use and we're not going to do any SOCH stuff. And just being silly with it, and also having a good sense of humor. I think that's also important when it comes to working in mental health. Like you can't take everything seriously. Of course, there's like a professional aspect that you do have to put out there, but then in our personal lives we try to still retain that silliness and do things that we used to like to do as children, which is something we also take into our workplace as well as our workshops, right? Like reminding our SOCH family, okay, what did you guys like to do as kids? Like, when was the last time you painted? When was the last time you had a dance party? So anything
there's a dance party at Jasmeet's house all the time.
Literally.
And I'm sure there's an open invitation for anyone. Like, I actually remember, like, I think high school, like I would just walk into her house. I was not that friend who knocked on the door or, called before. I would just walk in, and so many times I've walked into her house and her family is dancing.
Literally.
Yeah. Like dancing is so powerful.
And Maneet's even opened my mail. Like last week was nursing week, and I posted that Maneet and my sister, I was at work like 8 years ago, waiting for like the results of the national exam. And Maneet and my sister just opened my mail. So she knew way before I did that I had passed, right? So like having those friendships, like that silliness, that's definitely needed in this line of work and in anything.
I was just going to add just like one more thing on top of that is don't wait for things to build up. You need to have small things of self-care every day, and self-care varies, right? Like some people think like self-care means like taking out your yoga mat and sitting there for an hour and meditating and making sure that during that hour you do not think of anything else. Like self-care can mean that, today I want a Netflix, or on another day I want to cook, or, like small activities that helps you kind of bring you back to the present, gives you small bits of joy. And these things are so different for everyone, but you need to be taking care of yourself, right? Like on a day-to-day. And I think right now with the global climate of things, it's so important. And the people that probably were not practicing that before are probably struggling even more now, because their sense of distraction was maybe work and being out all day. And now you are with yourself at home. So to find those small things that, like Jasmeet said, get in tune with your childhood. What did you used to enjoy? And what can you make time for? What can you make space for? Whether it's 10 minutes, it's 15 minutes, it's an hour of dancing, whatever it may be, to find it. And there's so many things there, feel free to reach out to us at SOCH. We'd love to like help you brainstorm or get connected, but there's so many incredible resources out there.
And to even add to that, like knowing when to reach out for support and help. And I think that's kind of also where our transparency also comes in with SOCH, right? Especially with social media, people sometimes think the person behind that platform has, their shit together. But like with us, like we're very transparent. Like, no, we also have our moments. Like we also struggle.
We don't have our shit together.
We literally cry like all the time. We've had meetings at coffee shops, and it's just like, oh, how's your day, Maneet? And then she starts crying, tells me what's wrong with her. Then it's my turn to cry. So, just being
then we're like, now that we got that all out of the way, how do we help other people from stopping their crying?
Exactly. So just being open to help, whether it's just like your family and your friends, or even professional help. And I think that's also something that we've seen people sometimes struggle with, especially if you're like a healthcare worker, you're in the profession, and it's like, but I should know better. Like, why do I need to go seek support, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I've also mentioned as well. Like, I'm a mental health nurse, but I've gone to a psychotherapist, right? Like, you can't counsel yourself. You can try to change your SOCH by yourself to a certain extent, but sometimes you need the help of someone that actually knows what they're doing and can help you, cut that negative thinking pattern and change your behaviors. So reaching out for help when needed.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to have that dialogue. I mean, we are social beings, but if you've suddenly got a negative thinking and you're only ever around yourself, that's self sort of perpetuating. You never break out the cycle until somebody else says, actually, do you know what? You're amazing at this. All of these things that you're ignoring and focusing on this one negative part.
Yeah.
As me and my wife, we do this all the time. We're quite balanced. Where we will probably be hard on ourselves, but the other one says, actually, what are you talking about? That's amazing. Why are you focusing on that part? But I can imagine people that don't have that support, they need to then reach out, but it's taking that bold step to do that. I introduced in this pandemic, me and my son do bhangra dancing for about 20 minutes each evening. So
that's amazing.
I said, at least he'll learn to dance better than me. So if I start him early, he won't be doing any Sunny Deal dancing. But yeah, there's so many different ways of doing that. But I think people need to be open to different options. And like you said, I think it's so important to revisit your childhood, because you did things because you enjoyed them. And as we get older, we kind of get stuck into the corporate world or being an adult too much. We forget how to have fun, when actually your life is about having fun. It's a balance. So what is the future for SOCH? I mean, you've alluded to going full time with this, but obviously there's a lot of dynamics at play. You've got a full-time professional job, you've got a thesis and all these things. But what are your thoughts about the future and the timescales? Have you thought about those things, or any ideas at the moment?
I'm letting Jasmeet take this.
You decide.
I'm like, who's gonna answer? So before, I feel like obviously everybody's lives have changed now because of the pandemic, but our original goal was, by the end of this year, I need to finish my master's. Maneet is going to get married, which was already in the works. And then by the end of this year, SOCH is going to be full time, because, eventually you need to take that step, like that leap of faith. So our eventual goal is for SOCH to be full time. Right now it's a little, we need to revise those timelines because of the pandemic, but so definitely making it our full time venture, because the need is definitely there. And now, because of the pandemic, like a really cool opportunity has come out, which we were kind of thinking about before as well, but we were kind of afraid to get into, online, right? Like, by going online, we are able to take our work to a global platform. And now, because of the pandemic, it's kind of forced us to do that, right? So even looking at like the positive of this pandemic, so definitely doing a lot more work online, that we were able to reach a larger population as well. Building our team, like Maneet has mentioned. So once we are able to build our team, our volunteer base, which will help us, be full time, that's definitely needed as well. Anything else you want to add, Maneet?
And I think, like, in a sense, like, just hearing more of the community initiative, the community voices, and letting that, I think, have us move forward. I think one thing that we really struggled with was, I think, our confidence. Like, we struggle with imposter syndrome all the time.
To this day,
before, a workshop or after a workshop, or as we're starting a project, coming out of a meeting, we look at each other, we're like, who are we? Like, what are we doing? Because there's no one that we can look to follow. We are just creating something and being innovative.
Especially as nurses, I think, sorry to cut you off, like with nursing school, they never teach you that you can be an entrepreneur, right? So I think in that respect, we don't have anyone to look up to.
Like you are either in the hospital or you're in the community, right? And in the community, you're at organizations that are already existing, right? Like you're doing the work that's already out there. So I think we now have, whether it's through, you know, our faith, through Sikhi, through meditation, yoga, leadership courses, and connecting. I think people have really empowered us and validated the work that we are doing. And that, I think, allows us to be more confident. And now, you know, the work that we are doing, where can we see streams of income coming in to sustain ourselves, and then to give back into the community. So I think it's been confidence. I don't know if this also kind of plays into like our role as being like, you know, women in our community and the power of money in business. It's not something that, you know, a lot of people go towards. Like, you know, even in my home, like my father primarily, you know, dealt with the funds, although my mom, I would say in comparison to a lot of other relationships, she's very in tune with, you know, the financials at home. But I think that confidence, it all stems from that confidence, and we're feeling more of that now. So I think that allows us to kind of move forward and be like, okay, now all these things that we were doing, how can we capitalize on it? How can we make an income stream, but also keep programs and supports free for the community where appropriate? Yes. So I think that takes time. Like, I think no one can give you that confidence. You need to build that confidence.
And I think it also comes from like changing our own SOCH as well. Like we actually try to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
Like that's why we'll put up videos of ourselves, like, you know, like having a dance party at home. Like I'm telling you to do one, here is me doing it myself. Yes. Type of thing, right? Because so yeah, changing our SOCH, because like Maneet mentioned, we still have imposter syndrome, and even changing the phrase like, who are we, to now we say we are. Right? Like it's something so simple and so small, but we'll actually text each other like we are.
Now
period.
we're gonna have our SOCH family coming up to us and like, if they can, pat our shoulder, maybe from afar, and just say, you are.
Right? So even something as simple as that, just like changing your own thinking, right? So definitely, that definitely helps.
Yeah, I can sort of resonate with the thinking and the evolving as a journey. You know, what you start off, you never think, right, that day I'll be this X massive organization or something. You just do something because you know it's what you feel is needed, and the way you want to bring it about. This idea is in a fresh new perspective, because there's always room for doing things in a new way and against what people think it should be in. Like you said, you've only saw the two separate parts, but you're combining it. And I think it's amazing. You know, you are entrepreneurs, you are innovative, you are creative. You proved it. You're creating change in the community, for the community, with the community. You know, and it's going against all theoretical models and principles of what existing people may be saying. So I think that validation is really credible. You know, you've got something really beautiful that you've created, and you probably did it unintentionally because you had a passion for something, but because you have a true passion for something, it naturally evolves, and you, like you say, your own SOCH evolves, and then you're interacting with the world, and the world is interacting with you, telling you what it wants, and then you're delivering it, but then you're learning and you become experts. So I think, you know, I wish you well with this organization, because, you know, I feel the energy that you give out, and I feel the impact that you've made without even seeing it. So I can only imagine what the community must be feeling when they do reach out to you, you know, that there is somebody there who feels what you feel and is there ready to help us. And I think it's really good that you are women, and you're taking ownership of it, and you need to thrive, you know, against all the old thought processes of Gurdwara management. You know, the whole there needs to be a big cultural shift in the management of Gurdwaras as well. And I think people from the outside coming in is probably the way it's going to happen, or the way that the influences from outside of that institute is going to really power that. And if you prove that, your proof is in the pudding. What you're doing is giving the results that's needed, and it's what the community probably yearn to have, you know, for generations gone past that have had to deal with it without this sort of support. So how do people help? how can people reach out? How can we help you? And that's both the monetary value as well. How do we practically do that? And as a physical volunteering, spreading awareness, what would you say to me if I said, right, I want to help the SOCH family? What are all the different ways that I can help and engage with yourselves?
So I think just to start off with, like, just to be part of the community and to engage with us, we're pretty active on our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. SOCH_mental health is our Instagram handle. We post daily content and we try to keep relevant. We may have a theme for the week. For several weeks, we were posting about the pandemic. This past week, we were covering grief and loss, because right now the climate of funerals and how we do end of life celebrations has really changed. So, to know that this information is out there, it's relevant. We try to have engaging posts where we ask our SOCH family to share their thoughts and their tips and strategies. So know that that's an active resource for yourself, and to share that and spread that. Because I think, it kind of comes back to what Jasmeet was saying. You tell one more person, whoever listens to this podcast, you tell one more person, we're growing our community. And in a sense, we're growing like our army to, fight the stigma. And you can't do something like this alone. Healthcare professionals can't bring change. The change is going to come with working with the community. Along with that, we do have, our new project that was kind of like a revamp of our old project is our episodes with the Sick channel, which we just recently resumed. So that comes on weekly. It airs across US, UK, England, and US, Canada and UK, because I said UK and England together. But, to know that that's online, share it with your, because we do have videos that we have in Punjabi. And I think, it's one thing that we share this information with people, part of our fellow generation, but to have these conversations with your parents and your grandparents, and spark that dialogue, because I think that's where change comes from. Those are some active things that we are doing. At this time, we are kind of revisiting our volunteer game. So if you're in the GTA and you want to be a part of us, our initiative, you can reach out. We will, I think at this point, we are still kind of troubleshooting through our current volunteer roster and getting those programs going. As a result of the pandemic, there's been changes with that. But to know that, we have upcoming workshops that we will be sharing on our social media platforms. And you can also check out our website, sochmentalhealth.com. A lot of relevant information is shared there. And I think that's how it is to be part of the community. And if there is, a major gap that you are feeling, either you need to, first of all, be connected with services, reach out to us. It doesn't matter where you are. We've helped people in India, in Australia, in the US connect to services. So we're here for you to do that. And also, if there is something like you have an idea and you have, some way or shape for us, a new project or something for us to help or support in, reach out. Please do be patient. Sometimes it may take us some time to get back to you. And, with projects, sometimes it's many conversations before things come to fruition. But those are one of the many ways that you can join and be part of the change that we are creating.
So if I wanted to donate, do I go to your website? What are the different avenues that people can donate to the organization?
So if anyone does want to donate, you can either send us an email transfer. I know it's usually more if you're in North America, because I know internationally there's a few changes, but it's rnsoch@gmail.com. But you can always send us an email, info@sochmentalhealth.com, or send us a DM on any of the social media platforms to get more information on how you can donate, especially if it is an international donation. So we are also currently not a charity, so we don't have tax receipts, but we still can provide a receipt that we have received your funds as well. And definitely, like I mentioned, so this year is when we actively, started, I guess, to put that out there that we are accepting donations. Because like Maneet mentioned before, we weren't really out there going out promoting ourselves, marketing in that sense, because we were heavily focused on the community work. So definitely, if someone does want to donate, you can reach out to us. And we have been so thankful to the community, with the fundraiser that we did this year. year. So we're definitely willing to accept your donations, and know that the funds do go into like planning, actually executing the workshops. So our goal is that if we are able to get funds from the community, then these workshops that we are doing, which, well, we were doing before the pandemic, they were all free for the community. So that's our way of the way that we've been doing like the income stream and giving back to the community.
Brilliant. That's amazing. All right. So we're celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week here in the UK. I'm not sure if that's the same in Canada, or was that?
We had it the week before.
Yeah, the week before. I wonder why they don't just time it together. But
it's like Mother's Day. We have it separately. This is what I have to remember with my family in the UK.
Definitely. So the theme for us was kindness. I don't know if the theme was different for you or the same. So I thought it'd be nice to hear from you both on what you feel kindness is to you in your own personal way.
To me, I think kindness also starts from within yourself. So, and that's something that I've personally been working on the past 2 years when I was seeing a psychotherapist myself. Like you also mentioned, like you've been hard on yourself, right? And then you and your wife kind of have these conversations like, oh no, you did this is like a good thing. So definitely you need that support from outsider influences as well. But kindness starts within yourself and how you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself. So definitely, I think that's my message to the listeners, that once we are able to change the way that we speak to ourselves, which starts with, changing our SOCH about various things, like what we believe about ourselves, the way we view other things, that really resonates. And once you're kind to yourself, then it's easier to give that kindness to other people. So the way you speak to yourself, needs to be kind as well. So like I gave that example before, changing, who are we to we are. Something as simple as that. I think that's also you being kind to yourself. So the way you speak to yourself and the way you talk to yourself.
Nice. I like that. And Maneet?
So I think for me, kindness, like I think one element of kindness is just love. Right? In whatever aspect of dose, like kindness, you can't measure kindness. I think sometimes we look to see like it needs to be a grand gesture, but it's small acts of love, like that you do for those around you, that you have a, more intimate relationship with, even those you have an informal relationship with. And I think, Jasmeet captured that so beautifully, like in kindness, don't forget about yourself. What bits of love can you put into the world daily for your family, for your friends, for your colleagues, for the world? And that in itself is kindness, and not to measure kindness. Because I think sometimes we disregard some of our actions as being kind because it doesn't measure to a certain level of what someone else may have done, or, so small acts of love.
Brilliant. It's amazing. Yeah, I think everyone's definitely going to enjoy this episode. There's been so much to learn from yourself. There's so much experience that you both have, and the energy and that you sort of exude. People can resonate with that, and I hope everybody supports SOCH with everything that you're doing today and in the future. It's an amazing learning experience for me as well. And I think Jasmeet, you mentioned the thesis about alcohol and the impacts on families and outcomes on that. So that's quite an area that I'm interested in. So feel free. I would love to have you talk about that in more detail in a future episode. And I think that goes in general as well. You're both welcome to this platform. Consider it more yours than mine. Whenever you want to highlight something in our community or raise awareness for anything, or if there's a new project or even a fundraiser you're kicking off, feel free to contact me, and we can arrange for you to be on the show again at any point. So I hope you enjoyed being on this episode as much as I've enjoyed having you on here. Was any final messages you wanted to give to the listeners?
I was just going to say, like, one thing that Jasmeet and I heard at a mental health conference that was really impactful for us, and I think that's one of our other mottos, is to create change, you need to be a shit disturber. And, I think you got to be passionate. And I think that's where we're coming in at. Like, we want to come and, be shit disturbers with mental health, break the stigma, challenge, just the current climate of things and how people are getting comfortable with how things have always been done. And, for us that we're lucky to be, women have powerful voices. Our parents have been behind that, to be part of an ethnic community. Not everyone feels that they have a voice and that they can, stand up and speak and fight. And it's really neat because in our nursing careers, like we've heard about people, spearheading and being pioneers in something, never imagined that we ourselves would be doing this with the work that we're doing. So it's really amazing to have that. So my message to everyone is, be a shit disturber and challenge the norm, right? And that's how we're going to create change together.
Definitely. Jasmeet, do you want to say anything else?
No, I love that message. I actually forgot all about being the shit disturber. So when we had our fundraiser, we got shirts made for ourselves, and on the back, we had like all the words that we are. So like women, Sikh, and shit disturber was like the main one. So definitely. And I think it kind of piggybacks off of like what Maneet was saying, that, you need to be a shit disturber if you want to make change. But everyone has all these grand ideas in their mind, and that's kind of how we started as well. I think it also comes from our profession as well. Like you have to plan, everything needs to be streamlined. But if you do have an idea, go for it, right? Of course, you need a little bit of planning, but then you also need that action piece as well. Because if we didn't have someone to actually push us to do this, who knows if we would have even.
We probably still would have been talking about our so-called TV show and being on the radio.
Honestly, so if you have an idea and it's or if you have like, a dream job that doesn't exist, you can go and create it, right? Like I kind of hope that like our story with what we are doing with SOCH resonates with people in that sense and kind of inspires people that if there's an idea that you want, you can do it. You have that potential to do it. It starts with the kindness within yourself, seeing that light within yourself, to actually implement it. And even like our own stories, like, having seen mental health challenges in our own homes, of course, there were periods where we were like, what the hell is going on? Like, why is this happening to us? But then owning that story, whatever it is for you, and seeing what can you do with this, hand that you've been dealt, and give back to that community. And I think it also kind of goes back into seva, right? So whatever idea you have that potential within you, you have that capacity, own your story and change it from, who are we to we are, whatever that you are, we are is for you, it's yours.
Next time you say, who are we? I'm playing this episode for you.
This will probably be tomorrow.
Have the clip ready.
When I work on my thesis.
I think part of my part of what the platform I created was is on the background there. You probably see, to educate. So you need to understand what you're trying to do, get the knowledge, you gain it, but then you've got to be inspired to take action, and that's the key thing. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I've got this idea, I'll get to it one day," or it's an idea, but I don't want to tell anybody because someone might copy it. And I'm like, actually, it's probably better you tell somebody, and if they copy it and do it and you didn't do it, it's probably at least as better, it's out there. So you get over that bit around protecting things, because actually the power comes in when you tell people about something, because they'll ask you about it. Oh, and 2 weeks later, what did you do about it? Did you do anything about it? 6 months.
Yeah, that's where that accountability piece, right?
And also intention, you put it out into the world, you said it out loud. Now it's like, you must deliver.
Exactly, yeah. And I think part of that is, coaching is all about that. The coach doesn't tell you anything. They just ask you and hold you accountable to your own words. And I think you can almost self-coach as well. But you need to just get it out. And I think this is the part of the platform that I really want to promote, is innovation is the future. That shit disturber, hashtag that, brand it, trademark it. that needs to be out there. I don't know if you've heard about this guy called David Goggins, but he's an ex-Navy SEAL, but he's got this book called Can't Hurt Me. But it's like not motivation, it's literally that shit disturbing thing. Like, you want something, you got to do it. You got to do the work. It's going to be difficult, because otherwise there's no point doing it. Period. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Exactly. And it is hard. There's times like evenings, weekends, Jasmine and I have had to put into this. Our families have been, starving,
Missed meals.
waiting for us to eat with them. Like, but I mean, it comes in waves. Like, it's not that you learn, but you have to put that work in. It is a sacrifice. Like, you're gonna, reap those benefits. Like, you have to put that work in. It's not something you don't just wake up and this happens. It's time and energy.
And we have the perfect role models. We have our gurus. They disturbed everything. You name it.
Mm.
Not just the philosophy or religion. They disturbed infrastructure. They created new towns. They created new businesses. They created a whole massive mind shift in people. I think we be sad if we didn't take that inspiration and do something with it. So yeah, I think I really loved having you on the episode. I think it resonates exactly what I wanted to get out there, and I think people would get the energy from you, and I hope everybody listening learns from you. You've shown the journey isn't easy. You put in the hard work, and the journey is difficult, but you're making progress. But you're checking in, and the vision is getting bigger and bigger because it's getting validated along the way. So it's a reassuring thing. I think the pleasure and the pain. I did an episode about that, and I said, look, people think doing hard, we naturally want to avoid hard things. That's just human nature. We want the easy path. But if you want to prove something, or you feel like you've accomplished something, you only accomplish things that you worked hard for, and then you realize once you've got it, what you really enjoyed was the journey, not really the end product, because the journey that actually got you there. It's like the same thing I did with my exams. I missed doing exams, and when I got the thing at the end, I was like, it's just a piece of paper, but it's the knowledge and experience I gained along the way that's made me who I am now to have that qualification. So yeah, so I think I'd welcome you in future. I'd love to talk about the thesis topic because it's really, I think it's something that's it affects a lot of families. It affects a lot of trauma that people probably would have faced as a young person going through that alcohol in the household being that negative impact. So yeah, I want, whenever you're ready, because I know you've got 101 things to do at the moment.
Yeah, that's actually one of like our number one inquiries, like substance use in the South Asian communities.
I would welcome that email or call from you at any time.
Thank you.
So to wrap up, really, thank you very much, Maneet, and all the best with the wedding this year. And Jasmeet, all the best with the thesis. And I'll be keeping a close eye on the SOCH family and be part of the family as well.
Yes, you are part of the family, and everyone listening today, we've made you a part of our family already, even if you want to or not.
yeah. Part of the family. So yeah, so any help you need from me, feel free to drop me a message or an email. I'll always be there to promote or help in any way I can. So thank you very much, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you. Sending so much love and light to everyone around the globe listening. We hope you continue to stay safe and wish everyone the best.
Definitely. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Seek Coach podcast. If you found this episode valuable, do share with your friends and family, and do give us feedback. You can email us at theseekcoach@gmail.com or find us on Facebook. Just search the Seek Coach podcast and follow us on Instagram at the Seek Coach. Thank you for listening. Stay blessed.